shook the Earth violently, unleashed a wave of destruction, and triggered a nuclear emergency.
That's a lethal dose, isn't it?
It is if you're exposed to it for a long period of time.
On News in Review today, Japan and the nuclear nightmare. Hello, I'm Michael Serapio. On Friday, March the 11th, Japan was struck by a massive earthquake. The quake that registered 9 on the Richter scale was one of the most powerful ever recorded. So powerful, it shifted the planet's axis by 25 centimeters and shortened the length of the day by a fraction of a second. So when it hit a wide area of northeastern Japan, the effects were devastating. Without warning, an ordinary afternoon in the city of Sendai, about 300 kilometers northeast of Tokyo, turned into this. People searched for cover or just ran for their lives, but as frightening as the earthquake was, it was about to get a lot worse, because the quake caused a 20-meter high wave, or tsunami, to smash into Japan's eastern coastline.
Live footage of Miyagi as the tsunami has struck the area, obviously engulfing farms, homes.
The huge wave surged out of the sea and rushed inland, sweeping everything before it. Homes were crushed like toys, cities were flooded, and fires broke out everywhere. And then, as if all of this wasn't enough, a huge explosion rocked a nuclear power plant in the city of Fukushima. The explosion blew the top off one of 6 reactors that had been damaged by the quake and crippled by the tsunami. Workers poured seawater on the damaged building to try to cool down the reactor core, but then the power plant was rocked by another blast. The CBC's Chris Brown filed this report.
The precarious situation at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant underscored this disaster is still unfolding. Another reactor was rocked by an explosion Monday. We think it was a hydrogen explosion, explained the official, who later admitted the reactor's fuel rods may have been exposed. That significantly increases the risk of the core melting down and releasing radiation into the atmosphere. Tens of thousands of people have been moved out and are being tested for radiation poisoning. Authorities have taken the last gasp effort of trying to cool down the reactors with seawater. No one really seems to know if it's going to work. Rescuers are only now reaching some of the hardest to get to regions, and there are all too few happy endings. In Miyako Prefecture, the lucky described how they got away. I thought, this is it, it's over, she says. I thought the wave was going to take us with the whole house, and I was thinking, how are we going to get out of here? And I was just in total hysterics, grabbing onto my son. Hundreds of thousands of survivors are in desperate straits. There's very little food, 2 million are without power, and there are few places for the homeless to go. 20% of Japan's nuclear plants are now offline, and they supply the bulk of the country's power. So there's now energy rationing. Gasoline has become a precious resource. In some cases, there are 2-hour waits at the few stations that still have fuel. People are coming to fill up their tanks for their heaters at home. The electric company has said that there are going to be rotating blackouts, 3 hours or 4 hours long, and folks are worried that at night it's going to get very, very cold. At the grocery stores, shelves were emptied quickly. Closing stores early to save electricity led to some binge buying. I'm planning to buy lots, she says.
Japan has mobilized some 100,000 members of its self-defense force, the largest military mobilization since the Second World War. But even for the troops, it's getting difficult to reach the disaster zone because the roads are so congested.
As some radiation leaks were reported, many people scrambled to leave cities near the stricken reactors, like these Chinese nationals.
It's very emergency. I have no plan. I just want to go away, and I will take a plane to Hong Kong or somewhere.
The Japanese Prime Minister pleaded for calm, but roads heading south were jammed with cars for kilometer after kilometer. While most people fled or were evacuated from the area near the stricken nuclear power plant, a small group of workers stayed behind. risking their lives to try to cool down the reactors and avert a nuclear meltdown. The CBC's Joanna Remiliotis has that story.
It's the one place everyone is fleeing, the site of Japan's smoldering nuclear crisis. But for the so-called Fukushima 50, there is no escape and no retreat. We may not know who they are, but we do know they are clad in highly protective gear like this. A skeleton team of about 200 technicians working around the clock in shifts of 50.
You know, the thing you're really concerned about here.
Duncan Hawthorne runs one of Canada's largest nuclear plants. He's in daily touch with Japan and calls it a stopwatch operation, with workers darting in and out of radioactive hotspots to fix pipes and unclog vents.
Obviously, they're trying to find routes to the equipment without putting people through those fields.
It's not clear what doses of radiation the workers are absorbing, but Japanese and Canadian exposure limits are similar. Workers in both countries cannot be exposed to more than 50 millisieverts in 1 year. Japan just raised that limit to 250 to deal with the emergency. That's high enough to increase the long-term risk of developing cancer. But at least one worker has already been exposed to levels 40 times higher. That's a lethal dose, isn't it?
It is if you're exposed to it for a long period of time. All we know is that was the dose in the region where he was.
Officials insist the spikes only last a few minutes, that however apocalyptic the images, the workers are not charging to their deaths, at least for now. But a nuclear meltdown is still possible, and so is the risk of more and more dangerous radiation.
3, 2, 1, clean.
Nuclear experts say so many unknowns must be putting unthinkable stress on the workers.
I can't imagine the pressure these people are under right now working in that environment. They're making critical decisions every day in the absolute most difficult of circumstances.
And so the race to avert a full-blown nuclear crisis continues. Nowhere more quickly, probably nowhere more frantically than inside. Joanna Remiliotis, CBC News.
While the desperate struggle at the nuclear plant continued, the death toll continued to mount. 2 weeks after the quake, more than 10,000 people had been confirmed dead, and another 17,000 were listed as missing. But when CBC's Chris Brown visited one devastated village, he found both shock and resilience.
There is little that's recognizable in the fishing village of Noda, once home to 5,000 people. 3 kilometers from the shore, and the smashed bits of people's homes and lives create a post-apocalyptic landscape. Amid the ruins, Sue Hirone has come back. My house was located over there, she says, more than 100 meters from here. We had to search for it. On March 11th, the tsunami siren sounded and the monster wave raced in. Hirone is the third generation to have her home crushed by a tsunami. More than a century ago, her grandmother lost hers, and after that, her mother went through this too. All I've found so far are clothes, she says. That first tsunami wave smashed against a 13-meter-high breakwater and kept on going, inundating the town. Then came a second wave. And a third. I don't know what to say about all this, she says. I'm speechless.
It's hard to see how anyone could have survived this, but in Noda the death toll was comparatively low. That's because when the tsunami alarm sounded, people had roughly 30 minutes to run, and they'd practiced the tsunami drill many, many times.
Indeed, Noda is one of the luckier places. 40 people are dead. Further south, the prediction is at least 15,000 bodies will eventually be found. A little up the road, the wave crashed through family businesses. The store named Get Profit is now facing losses. worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. A long time ago, says owner Seito Hitauki, there was another big tsunami, and after that they moved the town further back from the water. This time he says he's not sure if the community will be rebuilt here or somewhere else. His neighbor, Mrs. Nuyama, showed us a few prized possessions the waves spared. Up to here. But can she actually live here again? I can't even contemplate how much this will cost, she tells us. Her burden and the town's future is now being shouldered by hundreds of firefighters brought in from across Japan. Their mission, not just to search and rescue, but also to rebuild. At the helm of the operations is Noda's mayor, Yuji Oda. Oda watched from a safe vantage point as the tsunami engulfed 500 homes, 3/4 of the buildings here. On top of being mayor, Oda teaches judo. Some of his young students are among the dead. My first impression, was this real? Or was I watching a horrible movie, he says. The destruction in Noda stretches block after block after block. Now its history lies here. Photo albums, scattered by the wave, have been gathered up so as to not forget about a more cheerful and ordered past. But where do you start? Sue Hirone and her husband know at their age a comfortable retirement is gone. I'm 72, my husband is 78, almost 80, she says. We're on pensions. Like the hull of Noda, her veneer of calm will be tested. In typical Japanese fashion, the recovery has begun in a very methodical, organized way. The challenges are enormous, but so it seems is Japan's national will to overcome.
While the Japanese come to terms with the scale of the damage, they must also deal with the invisible danger of radiation. And as the CBC's Kelly Crow reports, the Canadian government has taken steps to ensure that our food remains safe.
For Japanese consumers, the news keeps getting worse. First, there was radioactive contamination of some vegetables, and now they've learned Tokyo's drinking water is not safe for their babies. I am so worried, this woman says. Because infants are growing quickly, there's more chance for cell mutation, and they have many years for cancer to develop. Experts insist the water is still safe for adults. If this were temporary, I wouldn't be so worried, this man said. But if this is a long term, I think we have a lot to worry about. So how long will it be a problem? That depends on how long the damaged reactors keep sending radioactive material into the atmosphere.
When the plume stops, the air will clear, and then we'll no longer have a radiation source raining down into the water.
Environmental scientist Miriam Diamond says after that, natural decay will diminish the risk, especially for radioactive iodine.
So it decays fairly rapidly. So it decays relatively rapidly. But on the other hand, if it's cesium-137, the half-life is on the order of 30 years.
Which means food contamination will persist. Today, Canadian food officials announced they will take a closer look at Japanese imports from the affected area. Milk products, fruits, and vegetables will need documentation to verify their safety. But seafood is not on the list. In a teleconference, Canadian food officials said that's because they're relying on Japan to identify the products at risk. But importers do get some fish from Japan.
All the products in Canada right now are still okay because they're shipped prior to the whole entire the earthquake disaster in Japan.
And that's why there's been a run on some products like seaweed.
People buying it up because maybe no more seaweed for a whole year maybe.
In the end, very few of the products on the shelves will be affected. That's because Japan supplies less than 1% of Canada's food imports. Kelly Crow, CBC News, Toronto.
In late March, high levels of radiation were found in seawater near the plant. There were fears one of the reactor containers had been breached, and the Japanese government warned it could be weeks or months before the nuclear emergency was was over. And that is News in Review. For more on this story, check out our guide or download it at newsinreview.cbclearning.ca. I'm Michael Serapio. Thanks for watching.
So I hear gunshots, and it's getting bad. People are getting killed. Like, I'm in front of, like, wherever they are in the streets, they're getting killed.
It began with a people's revolt and a brutal crackdown. And it sent Canadian jet fighters on a mission to protect civilians.
This morning, 4 CF-18 fighter aircraft and 2 CC-150 Polaris strategic air refuelers departed Trapani, Italy, and conducted patrols off the northern coast of Libya.
On News in Review today, the uprising in Libya. Hello, I'm Michael Serapio. Libya is a country in northern Africa, the 4th largest country on that continent and one of the richest. It has a population of 6.4 million people, with about 1/3 of them living in the capital, Tripoli. It has big oil and gas reserves, and for the last 42 years, it has been ruled by the same ruthless leader, Muammar Gaddafi. In September 1969, when he was just a junior army officer, Gaddafi led a bloodless coup that toppled Libya's King Idris. In the 1970s and 1980s, he trained and funded terrorist groups and had his compound bombed by the United States.
I find he's not only a barbarian, but he's flaky.
He was also blamed for bringing down this jetliner with a bomb over Lockerbie, Scotland. But in the 1990s, he renounced terrorism and became known as a jet-setting eccentric with a contingent of female bodyguards